What stopped you from committing suicide? The thought of my 9-year-old special needs daughter needing me and my not being there. It's not like in movies, you can't just take pills and die. You suffer for ages and then just vomit it all back up. It was two simple things for me. 1, I couldn't get the image of my mom and younger siblings out of my head. I knew they'd be okay ultimately, but I was worried the stress of trying to carry their burden would probably make my dad die of a heart attack. I couldn't lend to the possibility of destroying my loved ones like that. Secondly, I simply did not know where a good place to go do it would be. I had no desire to traumatize or endanger others, as much as I wanted to be gone myself. I didn't even want to consider someone having to find me and clean my mess up. It was that simple, and from there I moved forward and got help. The approach of death and feeling it was imminent. I had taken many different pills and slid my wrist over a bowl of warm water and I started to feel like fainting. I then realized that one day or another I would still die, and I could do anything in the meantime, even the craziest things I could imagine. I wrapped my wrist with a cloth and crawled to the bathroom to make myself throw up. I was still able to clean the best I could, and fell asleep for hours. My parents thought I was very sick for the next 3 days but never suspected why. I had to cover my wrist with wristbands for years and would still be asked questions. My stomach has been pretty weak since. Over 30 years later, I'm glad I had that final instinct to live. I've had a crazy life, but now, I have 2 children, I have a job I love, a great partner and a life I wouldn't have even dared dreaming. I tried to hide on meth and crazy meds. I seizured out and had an out-of-body experience where I talked to a demon that had been following me my whole life. I know I'm going to hell, it's God's plan. I just wanted to do more good before I die. I wanted to jump in front of a car, but I thought about how much my family and the person driving would suffer. Family. I also have no access to quick and painless ways to do it. I also don't want to burden people with a hanging/decomposing body. I actually thought of creating an account on social media and then scheduling a post with a suicide letter so that I ensure no one stops me and that my letter, an open letter to anyone and everyone, gets out there somewhere. Not that it'd make any difference. Mostly, it's just my family and my conscience that prevents me from doing so. It would only cause suffering. I also think my consciousness would re-emerge and suffer again unless I deal with the question of suffering and the cycle thereof, though sometimes, I just couldn't care enough to believe in that worldview anymore. I'd say it's hanging by a thread. I don't really see the appeal of living in a collapsing world full of greed, hatred, fear, division, crime, sexual degeneracy. I'm talking about rape and harassment, digital crime, authoritarian absolute rule through faux democracy, data harvesting, corporate elitism, social media identity politics, from fucking mental health to whatever the fuck else, and so forth. Who would bring kids into a world like this? I'd rather fucking quit. Still, I can't do that to my family. At least my conscience wouldn't let it right now, so I just endure. I drag myself from one day to the next. Thinking clearly about the details of how it would actually go down, getting the supplies, doing the deed, them finding me like that. Just unbearable to think about. More unbearable than anything else that was happening. Raha. And #X200B. I demand satisfaction and I will have it smile. It would make people I've been unable and unwilling to alienate as I've been unable to find a way to do it without causing them great pain sad. And I don't want to do that skeptical. The thought of the pain I'd endure if I effed up and the incarceration that would inevitably follow. The idea of giving my hard-earned cash to a therapist to listen to all my shit when not even my own friends will listen has always left me with a sense of pure loneliness that I'll almost definitely never be free of. I was listening to Queen before I did it. Because if I was gonna go I'd want to have it be with something I enjoy. However, their song Don't Try Suicide came on and I broke down crying and clearly lived. 3 a.m. I'm sitting on the back of a fishing boat somewhere between New Zealand and Australia. I'm literally on a floating prison with my now new ex and her new partner that she cheated on me with. We were together for 8 years. I was sitting there and watching the water flow beneath me, knowing that if I just gave a little push, my body will likely to never be found. It was 3 a.m. when I sat down. Next thing I know, a glorious sun is rising directly in front of me. There's a pod of dolphins following the ship and I had an overwhelming feeling to get the fuck off the bulwarks and that everything will be okay. You know what? Now everything is okay. I must have sat there for hours lost in my thoughts until I woke up to a glorious sight. If you're in this position right now, message me and chat. Life will get better and I will try my best to help. My wife. Had a nice chat with her at a dam. About 6 months and $4,000 of mushrooms. It was the last thing I wanted to do. To learn who I am and see if they could give me a new perspective. They did exactly that. I started with microdosing to prime myself. Then I kept upping the amount I'd consume until I became unshackled from my stress. I knew from the start I wanted to use them to learn rather than for fun. I wanted to be comfortable with them at any dose. After a couple sessions by myself, I found a friend who I could share the experience with. We had tons of fun together. After a couple 1-ounce trips, I felt my life's value and didn't want it to end no more. My partner crying and begging me to put the knife down and away from my throat. That evening was the worst evening of my life. I don't think I ever cried nearly as much as I did. I'm better now and I owe my life to my partner and can never apologize enough for putting them know that. Was afraid of being remembered as someone who took the coward's way out. Not committing but having thoughts. I stopped thinking about them when I made myself realize that I have so much to live for. My younger self would be so happy if I continue to move forward and achieve and do things I wasn't able to do before due to limited freedom and money. Also, I'm a huge bookworm and the thought of not being able to read any of my TBR or future books will be a huge waste. Spite my dogs. Being too drunk to work the combination on the safe. My self-harm is quite creative. I didn't have a gun in the house. I have a child. Lack of a method. Nothing really. I want to give up but just simply haven't. I just keep walking and doing stuff. A lot of people have answers about pets, family, spouses, accidents, fear etc. and honestly I'm numb AF. I don't even care enough to die now. I passed the suicide part. I'm just the walking wounded now. 2 cats once, 3 cats another time, a friend listening without judging another time, and a transcending hug from a different friend. My dog, parents, brother, music, and boyfriend in no particular order. My boyfriend's oldest brother offed himself this January and I saw how horribly his passing affected my boyfriend and his remaining family. I don't want to put my family through all of that grief and heartache all because I couldn't see past the rough patches in my life. No parents deserve to bury their kid and I don't want to traumatize whoever would, hypothetically, find my body. Not to mention the huge risk of a failed attempt. I simply decided that I owed myself a little more time. I considered that there was a lot of shit that set me back early on in life that was entirely out of my control. I deserved a little more time to fuck things up on my own. As fucked as it is, I told myself I could always consider suicide later. But ultimately this saved my life last year. I'm 25. Remember to give yourself more time. Even just a little bit. The guilt of knowing my parents would be devastated. Literally just that. My mum and my friends. I'm too scared and in the back of my head I know that whatever issues I have now will not be as significant as I get older. Essentially the battle is, do I want to live this life? Is it worth living? It will get better but only because I won't care anymore, and if that is so, is it even worth living a life you don't care for? Never considered it. My dog. I couldn't handle the thought of leaving my little dude behind. I'm very glad I'm still here. My life is wonderful. It just took a few years to get here. Edit, fixed spelling mistake. I was just about ready to do the deed, but I noticed that my apartment was messy. I didn't want people coming in and finding me laying in a messy apartment, so I actually started cleaning. Halfway through cleaning I realized I hadn't left a note, and I was worried I'd be rotting in there for weeks until it smelled so bad people called the police. So I started writing a note, but I didn't know what to write or who to send it to, and I got frustrated. My apartment was still a mess and I still didn't have a note, and now I no longer felt like going through with it. So I left my apartment and went for a walk at 3 a.m. I walked to the water and watched the sun rise, and for some reason it gave me a completely new outlook on life. I've never looked back. I promised my mom I wouldn't do it. I also have a cat and live by myself, so I have to be here for her. Going to a funeral of a classmate that committed suicide, I watched the dad sobbed over the casket. I could not do it knowing that my dad would sob over my casket like that. Faulty primer. Having DID if I'm being honest. I played Russian roulette. Wasn't my number. Put the gun down and went to bed. Nothing. This is being typed from beyond the grave. Same thing that got me to do it in the first place. Failure. I took too much, it made me sick and I threw up and passed out. Medication. Prior to that I had a list of people who would have to fall out of my life before I could do it. Running through the list was the only thing stopping me. The idea of my mom finding me. I don't ever want to impose such pain on her.